Now we're going to have a look at some subtractive EQ and filtering. Now, as much as I want to talk about the machine learning aspects of this course on Neutron 3, and we are going to do that, we started off doing it obviously with the mix assistant. I also want to approach it as you would do a normal mix down as well. And I'm kind of going to try and do the basic mixing that I would do myself ordinarily, and then use the machine learning and the track assistant features to try and enhance what I've already kind of established. Now, filtering is a really important part of that. So when we get further down the chain of processing and we start adding compression, that serves to focus in on the sound and create areas of density. Now, if we have all the rumble and high frequency fizz that we don't need in sounds compressed later down the line, that's all going to be brought up in level. So we're going to be creating areas of density and focus, which include frequencies that we don't want to have in there. So it's a really important principle that you apply basic filtering on your sounds before you add compression. So when people say, do you EQ before compression or after compression? As far as I'm concerned, a lot of the time you're going to be EQing before and after compression. EQing beforehand to remove frequencies you don't want to be enhanced by the compression, essentially, and then boosting afterwards to be able to bring things out without it affecting the compression. It's almost a different process. I treat this subtractive filtering EQ as being a different process to boosting EQ, which is often done later down the line. Now, there's some different ways we can approach this. We could use Neutron 3's EQ plugin, but we can also actually use Relay. As I mentioned before, we have some basic filtering options within Relay. Now, for some of these sounds, I'm going to want to have the full functionality of Neutron 3's EQ. But let me just show you a way that you could use the filter within Relay as well. So let's take this finger tap guitar. So if we open up the advanced tab here and switch on the filter, we actually have a very basic filter here with some different slopes. So on kind of musical sounds like this, I don't like to use a very, very steep slope because it just sounds unnatural a lot of the time. So we'll try a gentle 12 dB slope. Now, you notice we don't have any analyzers when it comes to this filter, and sometimes that can actually be a really good thing because it means that you're using your ears. So that's one way you could do it, especially if you have low CPU on your computer and you want to save resources. That could be a great way of doing it. But let's actually jump across and have a look at Neutron 3's EQ. Now, it takes a lot of time to do this, so what I'll probably do is show you some examples on a few of the sounds, and then maybe we'll rely on Track Assistant for some of the other sounds. We'll see how we get on. Okay, so first of all, let's have a look at the kick drum. Now, the kick drum is usually a good one for EQ because a lot of the time there's kind of areas of the kick drum that are acoustically exaggerated and have kind of resonances in there, especially if they're live kick drums that you don't necessarily want and can interfere with other elements within the mix. Now I'm going to solo it just for the time being, just so we can really focus in on what we're doing. What I could also do is actually learn that's going to move these nodes around to kind of areas of interest, essentially. Okay. Now, it hasn't found any areas around here of interest, but I often find there's a kind of 300 hertz, 250 hertz area on kick drums that can be a little bit annoying. So I'm just trying to find it by boosting, and then we can just try cutting. Feels like it's maybe a little bit higher actually. So it sounds like a kind of room resonance around the 500 hertz area. Okay, so it's found a little area here, which we could boost to see if we can get a bit of sub out of the kick. I'm actually going to try a little bit higher. Now, I did say that often we EQ after compression, and that is generally the case, or a lot of time it's the case, but I find with drums often I like to actually EQ at the beginning and then compress to create kind of density around those areas. So I often find I end up boosting before compression on drums, but for a lot of sounds I would EQ after the compression. Okay, let's see about bringing out a little bit of attack on this kick. Okay, let's try in the context of the mix. So what you can listen for here, if you really, really shut your eyes, is with this EQ curve we have here, what we're essentially doing is boosting the bottom, the kind of fundamental of the kick, boosting a little attack area, and then cutting in the middle. So what that serves to do is basically push the kick drum down a little bit in the mix, because we've got an area of focus around the kind of sub frequency, and to accommodate that, we've removed some of the mid-range. So we're kind of removing some of the kick drum's focus in the mid-range and redistributing it down to the low frequencies and to the transient. So you can hear it just kind of pushes it down in the mix. It's quite subtle, but I feel like it definitely just helps to push the kick drum down a little bit. And that's what we can do with subtractive EQ. We're basically stretching the mix. So trying to make the highs feel higher and the lows feel lower. So the track kind of has a bigger distribution between the low and the high frequencies. Okay, so we'll leave that as it is for the kick drum. Let's try something similar for the snare. Okay, I'm going to take away some of these low frequencies. Steep slope. Just going to solo this for the time being. So again, we have that kind of roomy resonance there. Might try taking some of that out. You can try a little boost to get some snap out. try this in the mix. Now, something we can also do is roll off tops as well. People often ignore the high frequencies, but if everything has full frequencies and lots of high frequencies, it can actually mean that you have a clouded kind of high end. So I'm just going to do it quite subtly on the snare because it does have a lot of kind of noise in there we want to keep hold of. Okay, so let's just take the kick and the snare, we'll take out the Neutron EQs and bring them back in again. Now this is the advantage of having your plugins on one row, because you can actually quickly audition it in and out. So it just creates a little bit of extra space for the musical sounds that have their fundamental frequencies more in the mid-range. And just helps, especially the kick drum sync a little bit, though I don't want as much of the low frequency in there that we have. And what I'm also going to do actually is add in a high pass as well on a steep slope. So we take out some of the very low frequencies of the kick drum. So we're kind of redistributing some of the low frequencies higher up. So we're taking away and adding. I just moved that down slightly because I wanted still to have some of that kind of subharmonic frequency in there. Okay, so that's the kick and the snare. We'll take a break there and carry on with the filtering and subtractive EQ in the next video. Thanks for watching.